G'day, it's Field Master John Curtis. Today I want to present you with a masterpiece of chess. It's the great Aron Nimzowitsch playing black against Friedrich Saemisch. Now, you've probably heard this Nimzowitsch name before. He's got the Nimzowitsch opening, and he has the Nimzo defense, he has the Nimzo Larsen attack, Nimzo-Rubinstein variation. So a lot of opening systems are named after the great Aron Nimzowitsch. It was both Nimzowitsch and Reti, I believe, that were the beginning of the revolutionary style My System, which he created in 1925. He used to have a lot of arguments with the great Dr. Siegbert Tarasch about the way the game should be played. And he was one of the fathers of or probably the father of the hypermodern era of chess, where, unlike Dr. Siegbert Tarasch, you would have to, or he would suggest that you could attack from the side instead of attacking from the centre and just occupying central control squares and launching from that position. So in other words, the hypermodern system was basically that yes, you could allow your opponent to take the centre and you could chip away from the left or the right or whatever. And so that was basically the idea behind the hypermodern system. Anyway, we're going to look at this game here today. But first, we're going to talk about our friend Aron Nimzowitsch. He was born in Riga in Latvia in 1886. And in 1913, he was joint Russian champion with none other than Alexander Alekhine at St. Petersburg. In 1925, I remember he was supposed to play the great Raul Capablanca for the world title, but they couldn't get the funds together. There was no a monetary backing found for the game, so it's a shame because the great Aron Nimzowitsch could easily have been a world chess champion had he won that title, but there was no one to put the funds up for the world championship match. What else? He has got some notable tournaments to his name. He's got Copenhagen 1923, Dresden 1926, Karlsbad 1929, and Frankfurt 1930 as major tournament wins under his belt. And funnily enough, we wrote the book, I think, the My System, or came up with the idea of his book, called My System, or his hypermodern system, back in 1925. That was the same year that he was looking to try to secure funds to play the great Raul Capablanca. So perhaps what we missed out on, having a legacy of his games, we had that legacy of his writings, his chess writings. And you'll find a lot of those. There's a lot of writing. He was famous for his writings, his chess writings. Anyway, I'm going to play through this game now. And white, Friedrich Saemisch, you know the Saemisch defense. It's a pretty powerful defense. I personally, I'll be honest, someone plays a Saemisch against my King's Indian or something, I always worry because it's such a solid game. And that's the Saemisch system. So Saemisch was no mug. Yet here he is. He's the victim of the Immortal ZUGZWANG game. I suppose he probably held his head down in shame after this, but nonetheless, it helped to make him famous, and as well as Aron Nimzowitsch. So knight f6 is played by the great Aron Nimzowitsch. c4, e6, and that's just basically for black to play the bishop b5 check line if he gets the opportunity. And in this position, if black plays bishop b4 check, then you've got a Bogo Indian. That's called the Bogo Indian. But no, he elects to play a classical Queen's Indian defence and plays b6. So he's not decided against the Bogo Indian. And now white plays g3. And I mean, I personally, I'll be honest, I've had this position myself countless times. Bishop b7 is played. I played bishop g2. So if you go through my games, you'll find this position, castles and castles, right? So they're both castles into safety. Now, you'll find this position. For me, I play the white side of this, and I'm always happy to get this position against my opponents because it offers white so many opportunities to counter-attack, fight for key white squares and fight for the long diagonal and the like. And often in this position, as you can see, black played d5, but in this position, modern theory, knight e4 is played, knight and queen followed by queen c2, and if knight takes knight, queen takes knight. So knight e4 is one of the main theoretical moves. But d5 was played by the great Aron Nimzowitsch. He knew what he was doing. It's just another line. And now knight to e5. Now, again, I personally have got, if you go through my games, you'll see this exact position in the database of my games because I like to play the white side. And if I get the chance to throw my knight in on e5 there, then I'm absolutely pleased as punch to have the white position. But we'll just see what transpires. How you wonder how on earth, you know, like I see white as being dominant in this position. You say, well, how on earth could white be ZUGZWANG from this position? But we'll soon see. c6 is played. White plays c takes d. And that's okay because you cement the centre, and you've still got the outpost on e5, and you've still got full development as white. And black's knight is still back there on b8. So certainly at this stage, no evidence of any problems. C takes d. Okay. Now, examining the position, what are the pros and cons for either side? Well, black's got a really good black bishop, and black's got a pretty ordinary looking white squared bishop. White's got a good white squared bishop, as long as he can play e4, I suppose. And the black squared bishop for white really needs to be exchanged off, probably for that knight down there or something on f6. So that's the way I see the board at the moment. But I see, well, if white's going to break through anywhere, or he's got to play e4. That's the way I see it. You've got to play bishop g5 and maybe e4 and have a battle of the isolated pawn, do something a bit dynamic. But it is a very drawish line, so I usually play this against good players with the hope that they will try to press too hard as black and overreach themselves, and you can beat them. So because it does look very drawish. So bishop f4 is played, and I can't see that that's a really bad move. I don't see what it does. Doesn't seem to attack anything. I prefer bishop g5. I don't like this setup, knight e5, bishop f4, pawn on g3. It looks a bit awkward. But apart from that, I'll be happy as white with this position. a6 is played. Oh, hold on. So why you got to ask yourself, is black playing a6? Is he threatening anything? What's his plan? Well, obviously to me, when I look at the board, I'm a student of the modern game, I suppose. I see that black wants to play b5. So if I was white, I'd be thinking about playing a4. So I would play a4 and restrict those pawns over there on the queen side and try to keep my spatial control. Admittedly, I'd be giving up the b4 square. So, but a4 looks all right to me. But we'll just see what he does. He plays rook c1. Well, that's a good move. You can't fault that. Rook c1. He puts his rook on an open file. b5 is played. So now he's got it. Well, maybe a4 was something to consider. What does he play? Queen b3. Well, now he's threatening a4. Is he? Maybe he's not threatening a4. Maybe he should have played a4 earlier. But when he moves his queen over there to b3, it's not like he's fighting to play e4. Remember, I told you white want to break through. He has to play sort of e4. So white's sort of putting his pieces on squares that don't really have that much effect on his opponent. So he plays knight c6 and gets his pieces out. It's fair enough. He's probably threatening, black's probably threatening knight to a5 and knight to c4 just to annoy the white position. And white takes the knight. No, I think can't argue with that move. The position looks very drawish at this stage. I might remind you that Aron Nimzowitsch played Friedrich Saemisch on a number of occasions. So if you go to chessgames.com and look up their history, Nimzowitsch had an awesome record against this guy. You know, like he used to win the majority of the games. Saemisch, as good as he was, and an opening theoretician himself, he still couldn't hold it with Nimzowitsch. Nimzowitsch was a better player, and it's evidenced by the results. You know, like it was a big, like 3-1 in favour of Aron Nimzowitsch or something, or 9 games to 2 to 3 or something like that. 9 games to 2. Anyway, you can research those in chessgames.com. Here he goes. He's just played h3. Now, what would you play h3 for? I'm just going to go back one move there. Oh, he took the knight. Okay. And now he plays h3. Well, I can't see the purpose of h3. Doesn't seem to make any sense. It doesn't do anything. Again, as I said to you, I think that black really needs to get the bishop over there on g5, admit his mistake, and rip off the knight on f6 and play e3, and then sit back and build behind the d4 square, and eventually play e4. Because I can't see any other way of breaking through as white or being effective. Black's getting his pieces working. He's cleared his back rank. He's actually doing something. Queen to... What else could he do? Yeah, well... Yeah, the other thing I could do is I'd like to put the knight on e5 or c5, but it can't get there from the rotten square he's got it on. So king h2, I mean, and what does that achieve? That doesn't seem to achieve anything. So if the final result was that he was in ZUGZWANG, maybe he's waiting for black to put him in ZUGZWANG. Anyway, knight hits bishop. Well, hold on a minute. There's a bolt out of the blue. Remember, I did say to you that the bishop probably should go on g5 and take the rotten knight off. Or if the knight moved, then take the rotten bishop off, and then we've got an even game. Okay, so now we've got this bishop going back to d2. Well, that looks... I mean, that's really retrogressive. And black's got a far more dynamic position now. So black's got to make some choices. He plays f5 and he says, well, right, I'm almost ready to go. He said, I'm almost ready to play f4 too. What are you going to do about that? Anyway, white decides to bring his queen back to the king side, or aiming at the king's side to try to muster some defence over there. And now the pawn, oops, bingo, the knight, which is sort of not doing much on that side of the board, is now can't play knight to a4 after the queen moved to d7. So knight's only got one square. Hold on a minute, you've got nearly all your pieces on the back rank. You're going backwards, buddy. And now bishop comes forward, and now the bishop, which was a dead bishop before, the worst bishop in the world. It was the worst bishop, and now suddenly it's actually got a point. It's got reason to live. It's got purpose. That's the word I was thinking of. The bishop's got purpose there on bishop b5. It's aiming down at the castle on f1. Okay, so rook g1. I don't know what that's for, but Maybe it's something deep and meaningful. Oh, I know what it is. In case he's going to push his e-pawn, he doesn't want his rook taken. Oh, God, love him. And now bishop comes to d6. Well, that bishop, have a look at the diagonal. Just take a few seconds and look at the diagonal there. That diagonal, that black diagonal goes all the way down to the king on h2, doesn't it? So e4 is played. Well, that's the point of moving his rook to g1. You thought if bishop goes to d6, I can play e4 and I'll rip your rotten horse off. Well, you know what? I'm sure Aron Nimzowitsch saw that. I mean, Aron Nimzowitsch, one of the greatest players of all time, about to challenge one of the greatest world champions of all time in Capablanca. I'm sure he saw it, and here he comes. Pawn takes pawn, simply pawn takes pawn. And now he's won a pawn. So you're virtually forced to take the knight. And now the rook takes the pawn. So now what Black's saying is, in this position, he's saying, well, you can't challenge me, Sonny Jim, on the in the game, because you've got your you'd be too frightened to lose any pieces and whatever. And I've got a piece up. I mean, I've got a position whereby I'm squashing you. Well, in this position, there's only one move that White can play. He's really got to play rook to f1 and just give up the exchange. He's a piece up, so instead of having Black will have the exchange and 2 pawns, but still, you've got to challenge him on that file. You can't just leave him with this rook squashing you to death, so you can't play rook to f1, you can't move anything. You can't move your bishop anywhere. Maybe your bishop, if your bishop attacks the rook, well, you'll just go and take a b pawn. So he'd love to just skittle all the pawns. Then he'd be queening pawns on the queen side, supported by the 2 bishops. So, I mean, rook to f1 is the move that I would play in the position. But White plays queen to g5. Now the rook doubles. Now can you play rook f1? Well, you can't play it now. You just lost your opportunity to even challenge on the file. Well, what's the point of having an extra piece if you can't even challenge? So he moves his king back. Well, hold on. This is what he's been doing all along. He's been making king moves and pawn to h3 moves, and he's allowed all this nonsense to take place. He really asked for it. This is one of his saddest days. Rook on 1 to f5, queen to e3, but you still can't challenge a piece. You can't move anything on the open file. You can see how important it was now, before the rooks were doubled, to give up the rook and say, rook hits rook, what are you going to do? I am a piece up, right? And then if he took the rook, well then, and he wouldn't have had much choice, well then, because the rook had nowhere else to go, then you could just play bishop e3, followed by knight to d2, make your knight active, and it'd be a completely different type of game. So bishop to d3 is played now. Now this move threatens rook to e2, right? Threatens rook e2, and then when the queen moves, bishop takes knight, and then rook takes bishop, wins a piece. So that's the threat. So he stops it. At least he saw something. Okay, so h6. Uh-oh. And it's with this move that the great Aron Nimzowitsch announces ZUGZWANG. Because it doesn't matter what you do in the position, you're dead. And Nimzowitsch was reported to have said, White has not got to move left. If king to h2 or g4, then rook on 5 to f3, and you can't take the rook, because of queen takes pawn checkmate, right? Okay. And he says the black can now make waiting moves with his king, and white, after all, must, and he uses these words, willy-nilly, eventually throw himself on his sword. So what he really did was he played this move h6 and he announced ZUGZWANG. What a wonderful, wonderful game. And that, my friends, is Aron Nimzowitsch, the father of modern chess. Very, very interesting, isn't it? I hope you really enjoyed all that. And I'd like to thank one of my subscribers who came into my channel. He asked me the other day, can you play through an Aron Nimzowitsch game? So I felt like I was enlightened, and I thought, oh, well, I have to do some research. And I found this wonderful game, the Immortal ZUGZWANG game. Okay? And he was certainly a revolutionary, our Aron Nimzowitsch. And without further ado, I'm about to go. So I'd like you to please, can you thumbs up the video if you could, and make a comment in the video. If I see a comment there, I'll respond to you. And if you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, if you're just watching this for the first time, please subscribe. It's free to subscribe, and then you'll be getting notifications of further videos. And hopefully what I'll be able to do is put some together with even your suggestions. Make some suggestions and I'll try to fulfill them. I might create a YouTube video, and I'll make a choice from the suggestions I get from my followers. So thank you again, and goodbye for now.